Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. So, first, today, we are receiving reports that the Russians are expanding its heavy artillery capability. So, as we know, one of the key components of the Russian military is the Russian God of War, and that it's heavy artillery, it's multiple launch rocket forces. These forces, right now, in conjunction with various drone systems, are causing the vast majority of casualties in the Ukrainian military. Now, the Russians, throughout the course of the war, have been continuing to produce the Tu-19. You see that here in front of you now. Now, we have received reports now that the Russians are starting to mass produce and field the newest edition, the Tu-35. So this is a much more advanced system. It has a reduced crew. The crew is much more protected. The technology in this system gives the Russians the ability to very much accurately shoot, scoot, and vacate prior positions, and more importantly, fire at the Ukrainians at a very high rate of speed. These systems can reportedly fire up to 16 rounds a minute of 152 millimeter artillery rounds. Now, are we going to see the Russians use this system in terms of firing 16 rounds a minute? Well, the reality is a lot of these systems are being used to fire the Krasnopol, the laser-guided 152 millimeter artillery round. So a forward observation unit or a drone identifies a Ukrainian position or a Ukrainian military unit, a tank, an armored fighting vehicle. In this system, be it the Tu-35 or the Tu-19, has that ability to fire this laser-guided artillery round. One round, one kill. So, again, not just the Tu-19s now on the front line. We're going to start seeing more and more of the Tu-35s as well. And this is the most advanced artillery system currently being deployed by the Russian forces. Additionally, we're seeing some of the TOS-2s. Those are the thermal-baric launchers that fire the fuel-air explosive equipped multiple launch rocket system out to a range of about 10,000 yards, 10,000 meters. So these are the systems that are causing the Ukrainians the most problems currently. Now, additionally, we're starting to receive reports that the Russian ground forces, could be looking at reinstating the old Air Mobile Brigade. So back during the Soviet times, you had the airborne forces within the Soviet Union, but you also had these air landing brigades, these air mobile brigades that were assigned to combined arms armies. Now, these air mobile brigades in recent times under the Russian Federation had been eliminated. The Russians do have the ground forces component has the Spetsnaz brigades, and they do have that air mobile capability. But it looks like the Russians are going to go back to a designated air mobile brigade that could be used in this ongoing conflict. Now, as the Russians continue to wear down the Ukrainian forces along the front line, again with these heavy artillery systems and airstrikes, more importantly, we could start to see some of these air mobile operations in which the Russians are standing up these air mobile brigades, these new air mobile brigades. We have reports that at least one air mobile brigade right now is in training behind the Russian lines in preparation for future-facing operations against the Ukrainians. So very interesting to see that. We continue to see very heavy fighting taking place across the entire front line. These are very incremental offensive operations being conducted by the Russians. These are not mass maneuver operations, but again are operations in conjunction with the Russian Air Force, multiple launch rocket systems, and heavy artillery as the Russians degrade and destroy the Ukrainian forces along the front lines. And the reports that we're receiving right now is the Ukrainians are taking appalling casualties. Appalling casualties. The Ukrainians right now are being challenged through the lack of available ammunition to respond back to Russian artillery fire. The Ukrainian counter battery capability is being rapidly degraded. Not just along the front lines, but these recent Russian missile attacks against Ukrainian forces deep behind the lines throughout Ukraine are starting to take a serious toll. The Russians have been destroying arms depots, military staging points, where a lot of these Western systems, especially the ammunition that has been coming in, is being destroyed. And there are some Ukrainian units, some Ukrainian artillery units that are using, say, older 122 millimeter Soviet-era artillery systems. Some of these units are down to just 1 or 2 rounds remaining. That's how bad things are getting for the Ukrainians in terms of having the ability to respond back to these artillery attacks in perpetuity by the Russian military. And now we're going to start seeing newer, additional systems being moved to the front lines by the Russians, much more advanced systems that can fire much more quicker, much more accurately. Well, I don't want to say more accurately. You can't get much more accurate than some of those laser-guided artillery rounds. But just in terms of capability, this is an enhanced capability that is going to continue to give the Russians more advantage, especially in terms of heavy artillery. And in this war right now, artillery and the drone capability is the killer. It is the killer of Ukrainian forces. There is a reason why we have seen the average fighting age of a Ukrainian soldier go from his early to mid-20s to well over 40 years old. All those early 20-year-old Ukrainians, these very motivated fighters, warriors that performed very well in the early stages of the conflict, many of those soldiers are gone, either wounded or killed in action. We've even received reports now that the Ukrainians are having a serious problem with some of these older draftees that have been inducted into service, some of these 40, 50-year-old men. Many of them are alcoholics. And there is a serious issue with some of these draftees that are essentially taken off the street, put into Ukrainian service, going into alcohol-related DTs. Serious issue. But the quality of the Ukrainian military is rapidly changing. What we observed early in the conflict in terms of the makeup and composition of the Ukrainian military, that looks a lot different now. And we're seeing that in terms of the morale of frontline Ukrainian units as the Ukrainians continue to take these horrific casualties. And the concern is, here in the West, is that the Ukrainian military is going to reach a breaking point. And as I've talked about before, once that breaking point is reached, and as the Russian military continues to expand and we start to progress towards 2025, and as the Russian military becomes larger and better equipped, things could get very uncomfortable for the Ukrainian state. So that's where we are for today. We will continue to monitor and report. Thank you for joining us. More to come very, very soon. Have a good day.